Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this November 2nd meeting of the Southampton Village Planning Board to order. Could I have a motion to open the meeting?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The first item that was on the agenda is the Village of Southampton's application for the ambulance center at 151 Windmill Lane. I know there's some people here in the audience who wanted to address that issue, but we received a letter from the village today requesting that it be adjourned until the next meeting. So those of you who were here to say something, I apologize for you having to come here and find this out at this late notice, but we just received the notice ourselves. If you'd like to say something, you can, but you would simply have to repeat it again the next meeting because the applicant is not here and it wouldn't be entered into the record anyway. So with that, at the request of the applicant, I'd like to have a motion made to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to approve the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes the Southampton ambulance 151 Windmill Lane till the December 7th meeting.
They actually want to move to the work
They
session.
moved it to November
It will,
30th.
okay.
Right.
So to the November 30th work
Yeah.
session.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can you
Second.
just explain that to it will be on the work session, but it will be on for public hearing?
So there's a work session November 30th, which is a Monday, and that is an opportunity for the board to discuss among itself the merits of this application and any information we've received about this application. It's not really an opportunity for public comment at the work session. Sometimes the board might ask counsel or a member of the audience who has particular input on the issue to answer a question, but it's not, again, really an opportunity for public comment. And the next opportunity for public comment would be the December 7th regularly scheduled Village Planning Board meeting. Is everybody okay with that?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, so just to be clear, if a concerned citizen.
If you-
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a question, if a concerned citizen wanted to speak and have input, should we come to the November 30th meeting and the December 7th meeting?
No, just the December 7th. If you wanted to listen to the boards talk about it and hear what we have to think, you can come to the work session, but it's not really an opportunity to address the board until that regularly scheduled meeting on the 7th.
And if we wanted to make sure that the board has things to consider during its work session, should we submit
You
things
should submit
beforehand?
anything in writing. I've already received some letters in writing about the application, so
Okay.
yes.
All right, thank you very much.
And the next public item for public hearing is Capital Telecom acquisitions at 153 Powell Avenue.
Good evening,
Good
Mr.
evening.
Chairman, members of the board. My name is John Coughlin. I'm from the law firm Ray Nielsen, Huber and Coughlin on behalf of the applicants, Capital Telecom and New Singular Wireless, which does business as AT&T. I'm submitting up copies of the notice materials to affidavits and mailing receipts. Thank you very much. As the board is aware, this application was filed in the summer. Drawings, various other reports in support of the application were submitted by the applicants demonstrating the need for this facility. AT&T currently maintains a public utility wireless telecommunications facility on the Cablevision Tower on David White's Lane. That site is being removed at the direction of Cablevision, and this proposed facility will allow AT&T to relocate its wireless facility so that the village and its constituents don't have a loss of that wireless cellular coverage from AT&T. The antennas will be at the same height that they are on the current Cablevision tower. The structure, however, will be about half the height of the existing David White's tower. We have been in contact pretty regularly with the consultants to the board from the data submission to present. We've submitted supplemental drawings, structural materials, We have submitted various reports from the individuals that I have with me this evening. I would like to identify them for you and make them available for questioning, but considering the work sessions and the communications that we've had with the consultants to the board, I'm not sure if you want me to have them come up and do a full presentation. So I can tell you who they are and what they have to say from an outline standpoint and make each of them available to you. Mike Patel is here from Tectonic. He's a professional engineer. His office prepared the drawings that the board has before it. Mike was also in attendance at a site visit prior to this meeting and is available to answer any questions you might have about site design. Additionally, you have various engineering materials that have been submitted. Not sure if the board has any questions about those or whether that's more appropriate for building department review, but he can address that as well. Additionally, Donna Marie Stippo is here. She's the planning consultant. She prepared the visual resource evaluation report that you have. It has the photographic simulation showing what the proposed facility would look like if approved and constructed. Mike Lynch is here. He's a licensed real estate appraiser. He's done an analysis showing that if the tower is approved and constructed, it will not have a negative impact on real estate values in the area. We also have Dave Collins here from Pinnacle. He's the FCC compliance expert, and he's done a study showing that the facility will comply with all federal regulations regarding RF emissions from the site. And finally, Neil Arceo from Primera, P-R-A-M-I-R-A, is here, and he's a radio frequency engineering expert, and he's prepared maps and other materials showing the coverage that the replacement site would afford the community. So that's a very long-winded introduction to the concept, but I know that the board is familiar with it. So with that said, if you'd like me to bring each or any of those folks up, I'm happy to do so, or make them available for questioning from the board or any of the neighbors if they have them.
I'd be interested to hear bullet points of each person's
Sure thing.
area of responsibility, and then ask Mr. Comey, the board's consultant, if he has any questions or overall view of the application. And then if members of the public have further questions or points to make, it would, of course, the appropriate person would then be available to answer those questions.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to ask them to come up in that same order, and I can help them along as needed, but Mike Patel, if you would.
John, I have
Yes.
just one question. As part of the legal analysis, and maybe one of the areas of expertise, and I'm not exactly sure of the protocol here, but is this application subject to the federal regulation that the applicant has to sort of disprove the qualifications of any other site and establish that this is the best site for the tower?
No, well, we can talk about that a little bit. What the
Does the applicant have to show that it analyzed other potential sites and found them?
We need to show that this
less
site is a
attractive
minimal
than this?
intrusion
Yeah.
on the community.
Okay.
And that's really part of the special permit relief, which I guess is technically before the zoning board, but I'm happy to go through that with this board. What we have submitted to the planning board and zoning board as well are two affidavits kind of explaining the efforts and analysis of the neighborhood. As you gents all know, there's a very limited industrial area in that sliver of the village. And the site, from a replacement standpoint, needs to be located proximate to the existing David White's Tower to cover about the same area. So there was a very focused analysis of those properties in and around the selected premises to find where the best site would be. So finding a site that would serve the needs of the radio frequency engineers, finding one that meets the standards and considerations of the village, and also finding one that was available to lease. These were all considerations, and there are affidavits that speak to that in the application packet. Vince from Capital is here. He can speak to that a little bit more.
I think
but-
that answers my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Mike?
Thank you, John. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Mike Patel. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New York. I work with Tectonic Engineering. We prepared the plans that were submitted as part of the application for the tower and the pole that we're going to talk about. A few points I just want to bring out. AT&T is proposing a 165-foot pole structure on the about 4,000 square feet compound on the property. It's surrounded by a 6-foot board-and-board fence. Antennas will be at 165 feet height with some equipment at the base of the pole that houses electronics. And as you know, and John just mentioned, this pole is to replace the antennas that will be coming off the tower on the Cablevision property and to serve the village and the surrounding area. On the site plan design, the plans have been submitted. The pole will be designed structurally per code requirements, including the foundations. And all of that designs have been submitted and has been reviewed by the village consultant as well. If you have any other specific questions about the site design, I can answer those for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it unlike anything you've done before? Or is it just standard?
Nothing specific except the address. This is the only one on that property.
I know that, but I mean, there's several thousand of these somewhere in the neighborhood. Is this different than any of those in any fundamental way, because it's higher, lower, higher, or better?
They come in all different heights and shapes. I'm sure you've seen a number of those.
Oh, they're all over, some are trees and
Yes,
some aren't.
Exactly. But the height depends on the coverage requirement and the topography around the site. So that's, the wireless carrier decides how far the signal needs to go, and that's how the height is determined.
Is it your area to decide it will be as good or better than what it is going to replace as a matter of commercial usage?
If
Or does one
you're,
of the other experts have an opinion?
if you're mentioning about the RF coverage or signals, then it's somebody else, not me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Good evening. My name is Donna Marie Stippo, and I was retained to prepare photo simulations and to essentially show you what it would look like in a before and after pictorial, and then to document surrounding environs in which the proposed structure would be located. In addition, I was also asked to prepare a visual analysis documenting all of that and laying that out for you. The report has 7 photo sims and 9 additional photos of existing infrastructure facilities within an area. Insomuch as the code itself does not lay out a specific zone of visibility, which some wireless codes do, I defer to the FCC's radii with respect to historical properties and the size of the tower. The tower is only 165 feet in height, therefore the review would be a half-mile radii, and there were historic properties within the area. So that was my primary concentration, and then based on the landscape and the surrounding environs, we went out to a 1-mile radius. So the report documents visibility within a 1 mile with a concentration within a half-mile radii, taking into consideration the historic districts that are within the immediate vicinity. The tower itself, when you take a look at it along the view shed, is consistent with what is existing in so much as you have an existing lattice tower, the proposed, and we also have a blue utility tower that's right here or right down the street on Powell Avenue from the proposed.
So you visited the scene of the crime?
I did. And actually, we used a crane, so we had a crane up for quite some time so
Okay.
that I knew exactly where it was, and because wind does change, so balloons can have different variables, so we did use a crane right in the area. So I had a control point for the entire analysis, even though weather had changed. And we did the analysis in March of this year, so it was a worst-case scenario, therefore visibility would be at its most severe versus leaf on. Any questions on the
This
photo?
particular tower has no camouflage. It doesn't look like a tree, or it just looks like a tower. And what's your experience been with the attempts that some towers I've seen to look like different things?
Well, it's like anything. It's the setting in which it's proposed. So to stick a tree in the middle of the village that looks like a sequoia at 165, I think that no matter where you are, you would focus in on that, and that becomes the focal point. When you take a look at the photographs and you see the structure as it's proposed, it's consistent. So you don't focus, but it becomes part of your view shed. It's something that you're already used to seeing. Given that this is going to support one carrier, but knowing, as we all know, that Cablevision is doing this across the board to all, this showed 3 carriers, but I'm sure it can hold additional based on, the engineer can discuss that. When you start to take a look at how many are going to need this location and the consistency of what's literally right next to it, this would be a structure that would essentially be visually consistent. There's not many others to look at. There's a palm tree I've seen, but it's the wrong environment. There's another lattice tower, but that, again, starts to turn into something that's a little different. This has more of a streamline effect.
This is basically a pole. correct?
Exactly. It's a pole, just like you would have for any utility structure, and then the antennas can be put on. You can have a raise. You can actually put more carriers on this than you would if you did something that was more south. You start to close your opportunities for communication needs.
Gentlemen, further questions?
Second.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lynch?
Good evening. My name is Michael Lynch. I'm state certified real estate appraiser, and I was retained by Capital Telecom to do a study as to the effect that this proposed communication facility would have on the surrounding neighborhood. I visited the property back in August. I took a series of photographs, walked the neighborhood, prepared a report that was submitted back in August before the zoning board. My conclusions is that it's, as noted, it's a tower, a monopole tower structure that'll be 165 feet in height. The antennas will be coming off the Cablevision tower, which is approximately 300 yards to the north of this. On David White's Lane. The property itself is light industrial. The siting of the pole itself will be immediately adjacent to a Long Island Railroad right-of-way. The site itself is approximately 2.6 acres in area. It's improved with 3 industrial warehouse-type buildings. Generally, in the neighborhood, on the north side of Powell Avenue running north to State Route 27. It's industrial in nature. South of Powell's Avenue are primarily single-family residences to the south of this. Based upon existing conditions in the area, the design of the structure, the fact that we'll be essentially replacing antennas from a structure that's roughly twice the height as this, and given the existing zoning and the placement at the northwesterly corner of the light industrial, I don't foresee an issue where property values, primarily to the houses immediately to the south, would be adversely affected, given existing conditions, given the design of the structure, the zoning in the area, et cetera. And I did outline all my findings in the report that was submitted earlier in August, and at this point I can answer any questions if the board may have any.
Have we received no notices? No, we have, no one's complained.
Not yet.
Okay. We may be here to complain, but I haven't heard them yet.
I can come back if there's
Thank you.
any questions from any
Thank you.
neighbors. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Dave Collins. I work for Pinnacle Telecom Group, and my company's role in the proofs is to assess the radio frequency exposure levels at this site and determine whether or not it falls underneath the maximum permitted level permitted by the federal government. The government provides a mathematical formula so as to determine the level, and then you can compare it against what's the maximum permitted, and we have done that. And in this particular case, at 165 feet above ground level, using that's part of the parameter. We determined that the maximum level calculated at this site in terms of a percentage is 0.303%. That's obviously less than 1/10, or less than 1%. It's the equivalent of 330 times below the maximum level that is permitted. So we are in compliance by a very wide margin. Any questions?
Dave, what is the ultimate, the compliance level that you just mentioned, is that based upon the equipment that's intended to be now, or the ultimate capacity of the
Oh,
tower?
not the ultimate capacity, no. We're only dealing with AT&T's proposed site. The monopole does have the capability of supporting more than one carrier.
Your study doesn't include any potential further than
If
that.
and when they were to come before the board, they would have to present an assessment and proof as well.
Why would anybody have to come back in front of this board in order to do that?
If, were they to put up a cell site, I assume they'd have to come.
No, if they were to put more antenna on that tower, there's no reason why anybody would have to come back to this board.
Well, then I can say that there is also a categorical exclusion encoded in the law that if you are more than 32 feet above the ground from if you mount your antennas there, and you are below, I think it's 1,500 watts of effective radiated power, there's no need to demonstrate compliance. You are automatically excluded from having to demonstrate it merely because of the physics of you're high up enough and low powered enough that you could not exceed more than 5% down at the ground.
And is that the case here?
I would assume, yes, that if every carrier that is licensed, it's a guesstimate based on expertise. And I believe Mr. Comey would back me up. If you put all the available market carriers in this up on that pole, you still would not exceed the general population and maximum permitted MPE, maximum permitted exposure limit, even with all 5 carriers on the site.
How is MPE expressed as a matter of total wattage, height times wattage?
The
or-
simplest way is to you wanted this short.
There's always an attorney that's doing something.
It isn't an across-the-board standard for maximum permissible exposure across the frequency spectrum. Certain frequencies we are more susceptible to than others, so that it is a shaped standard. A quickie, as an example, 850 megahertz, we are roughly, the maximum permitted level is 5/8 of a milliwatt per square centimeter, about the size of your thumbnail, okay? For anything above 1,500 megahertz, i.e. the 1,900 megahertz that AT&T uses, it's 1 milliwatt per square centimeter. So it is shaped. It's not the same across the board regardless of frequency. So I lost my track where we were headed with this. What was the question?
The question was simply how are you computing the total power?
So what you would do would be, as in this was a multiple frequency site because AT&T carries licenses for several
Right.
frequencies. You do an assessment using the FCC approved math formula on each frequency, and then convert that, whatever level it is, into a percentage of what's permitted for that frequency band, and then add the frequencies up.
Okay.
For each particular distance. We do it out to 500 feet, which is what the FCC recommends.
Thank you very much.
Okay?
And that's for, how many eventual cell sites are there going to be on this? How many different companies?
Oh, he's better equipped to answer that, but
4?
there are, well, now T-Mobile and Metro merged recently, so I think now there's only 4 carriers in the market. So 4 carriers.
Is it purely additive? Is four times what one produces?
No, not necessarily, because there will be different parameters that you would add in. They have different frequencies that they operate at, different power levels that they operate at, and then they would be at different heights. And those are the 3 real main characteristics that determine exposure at ground level.
What do you anticipate to be the maximum of carriers on this tower?
The tower is designed to host 4 total. So that would be, in line with the numbers that Dave just mentioned. One thing that I would add is that although the village may not necessarily see these if the board doesn't have authority to review some future application. You have letters of intent from both Sprint and Verizon indicating that they're inclined to jump on if the village is to bless this proposal. Under their federal licensure, their FCC licenses, they have to comply with the standard. It's
Right.
part of the reason why certain applicants will take the position, we're categorically excluded. We're not going to even give you the courtesy of sharing this analysis with you. We report to the feds. So to the extent that the board or council, if that gives you any peace, they need to do that as part of their federal licensure to be able to continue to operate.
We know the federal licensure procedure is not perfect.
Certainly.
Compared to ours.
Yes.
I guess it's just AT&T. Is this the same as or an improvement over what we have today?
I'm not the RF engineer that designed the site,
Okay. Thank
so I
you.
can't really answer
Thank you.
that with any degree of
Thank
expertise.
That's the one I see coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
You just
The-
want your phone to work better.
Everybody does.
The gent who's batting cleanup will be able to address
this
that
is-
point. Neil, can you come on up?
That's the pressure. We're getting better or worse.
Good evening. My name is Neil Arceo. I am an RF engineer from Primera. I'm contracted by AT&T to assist them in the design of their network, RF network in New York Metro. The purpose of this site is to replace or duplicate the level of coverage and service currently provided by the AT&T facility co-located at the Cablevision Tower. And this Cablevision Tower is one of the first sites in the area, and it's a legacy site. So the other neighbor sites, they were built around this Cablevision Tower. So that's why it's very important that we maintain it in the same closest location as possible and at the same height, so that we can maintain the same level of service.
I would assume that since that original tower was built, things have improved in some ways in the science of the industry. Is there going to be new, better stuff that our phones are going to drop out so much because of this, or not necessarily?
Well, technology is always improving, so you can expect better service in the future. Yeah.
But basically, it's just a replacement.
Yes, because we're forced to, the Cablevision is kicking us out from, their tower, and it's a huge loss in terms of coverage, particularly in Highway 27. I would estimate roughly 3.5 miles of stretch that we're going to lose in-car coverage if we don't replace that site. It's roughly about 6 square miles.
Thank you.
Can get slightly better.
So that is the group of experts that I had attempted to summarize. Obviously, they don't know their material better than I do. But again, the proposal is really one to replace and to approximate that coverage that the village currently enjoys, and to make sure that we don't have that devastating loss that customers and users have grown to rely on in and around the village. Again, I know that you said you might want to have Mr. Comey come up and speak to the proposal, but everyone's here, and
you.
we'll stay. Thanks.
So, Dick, do you want to summarize your findings and concerns and what final conclusions about the application?
Absolutely. I'm Dick Comey. I'm the village's consultant on wireless. By the way, we do this all over the country.
That's what we're told.
And we
Good.
do not represent the industry or any of the tower companies, only the municipal side. We've looked at all of the information that you've had them talk to you about. I've also have a copy just to verify that they really do have to get off that tower. And yes, there is a written agreement that says they have to be off by November of 2016, a year from now.
Right.
Okay? So they do have to get off. Another obvious point is there aren't a great deal of hills or valleys out in this part of the island. So by moving a facility 300 yards south, generally, what are you doing by keeping it at the same height? you're in essence moving the coverage slightly, but you're not really changing it. So it's a duplication of what's there. Yes, it's needed. As far as the area it's in, I was out at the site today. Yes, it is in an industrial area, and you don't have many of those in your village, that's for sure. From the aspect of the height of the facility, you have sitting there the 300-foot lattice tower. This is a monopole, and yes, it will be constructed for up to 4 carriers to go on it. And by the way, once you have, if you do grant this permit for this pole, you want carriers to go on it, and they generally go on with 10-foot separation intervals, and depending upon the structure of what you want within your community, there is the ability to have co-locators come back to a board, depending upon what the community wants to do relevant to that. As far as the material, we received Friday afternoon some additional structural material because New York State is not up to date on the latest codes, and you don't design by the building code. There's a separate code for telecommunications towers, completely separate, based on the building code you're on. So we had asked, because that is the legal standard in New York State right now, it be provided to us. We got it on Friday. I do not have it all reviewed. There is also the fact that your nearest property line is 25 feet away toward the train tracks. And to make sure that should there be any kind of a catastrophic failure, which there's a very minimal chance based on it being designed correctly that it will occur, but should it occur, you design it with a break point so that if it breaks and tips over, and then if it even gets worse and that piece falls and falls to the ground, it stays on the property. So we will be looking at the break point design. We will be looking at making sure that the structure meets the qualifications and all of the requirements based on the design standards that are in place in New York State. So with that, yes, it's a facility and a replacement that's needed, okay? And the area within your community of which has been chosen to do it is one of very few. I have been here a few other times and am familiar with the difficulties of putting up these kind of facilities. But they do need that service, and it will be at the same height it is now, except the tower doesn't go taller anymore. The tower's down and is terminated at that height. So I'm here to answer any other questions that the board may have, but if some action is taken, I would make sure that there is a condition in there that the structural information is reviewed and is complete with a break point, and we will complete that review very shortly to make sure it's there. But I would not want to, in that we only got it late Friday afternoon, and my traveling today did not allow myself or my engineer to complete the review. Okay? Thank you. Questions?
Subject you're making sure it's going to break as advertised.
Yes, sir.
If we're in the middle of, by appointment of the public saying, we don't like towers, but we love cell phones, this is likely to be at least as good as what we have from Cablevision that no one likes generally anyway. So it's at least as what we have now. It might be a little better, or is it all about the same?
For the village, it should be a little bit better because it's moving 300 yards this way. Not a great deal. It's at the same height. It's not going to change dramatically in terms of what's there. Obviously, with other carriers having letters of intent to go on it also, the same situation would occur for the other carriers if and when that occurs.
So most of the complaints I hear come from people who say it doesn't work on the beach, so this might be slightly better for the beach because you're going south.
How do I say? There are conversations that are taking place relevant to that issue in your community, sir.
Thank you,
And,
sir.
and
Okay.
I think that's
Thank you.
probably sufficient to say, and we are having conversations relevant to,
Okay.
because I do know that there are places within your community that the service is not to the degree that everybody would like it to be, and everybody is using the service more. At the same time, and as you heard Ms. Stipo talk about the visuals, people do not want it to be intrusive.
Right.
So that has to be discussed in a great deal of depth. What's in front of you right now is this facility, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the board? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kathy, did you want to say anything, or should I invite the public for their comment?
No, I don't need to add anything. I mean, I can add that we will need to do the seeker review on this, and that once the seeker review is done, we can send it back to the zoning board and for them to make their decision. So they're waiting for that. But otherwise,
Okay, at this point, does anyone in the audience have, like to make a comment about this application?
Donna DeLeo, Village of Southampton. I just have a question. You said that any additional carriers going on this pole, they would have to be set at 10 feet distance from one another. So assuming that they stack vertically and not horizontally, that would mean that they would be, what, 100, the closest one would be 135 feet?
If all four
Close.
were there, yes,
If
ma'am.
all four, and we're assuming that that will happen. And so then, frequency-wise, how does that affect the surrounding area? It's now 40 feet closer, incrementally,
It-
right? By 10 feet.
Yes, it's very dependent upon where those four carriers, the other three are now, and how, at the height they're at now. From an emission standpoint, if you're talking about that issue, okay, the cumulative emissions at the site have to meet the federal requirements, as Mr. Collins stated. Each of the carriers operates, in some cases, in different frequency bands. The standard is slightly different, but if and when they have four carriers there, the cumulative emissions for that site have to be within the federal guidelines. Now, saying that, let me also say that based on the thousands of these that we've done, on towers where the lowest carrier, and I'll assume four at 135 feet, 6 feet above the ground where they calculate it, will definitely comply with the federal standard. There's no doubt in my mind whatsoever that the compliance with all four, even though they differ, they have multiple bands, they have multiple frequencies, on the ground, you'll be well within the limit of what the federal government says it has to be.
And who is going to have ownership of this?
The tower,
Yes.
what's the name?
Is it?
Capital Telecom.
Capital Telecom.
And so does Capital Telecom then accept oversight of what happens to this, both as time goes on, both legally, environmentally, et cetera?
Well, they have.
Who has responsibility?
They have that responsibility. There's also a responsibility that a monopole has to be inspected every 5 years, and there's a standard for doing that that's put out by the tower industry in terms of what they have to do, in terms of making sure that no one does something that's out of the ordinary, dealing with applicants that are coming in and are upgrading and doing all of these things. And I don't know which board you're going to deal with that, but you're now seeing a facility in your community that will have upgrades when they change the technology. That needs to be reviewed in a very easy administrative fashion. Most communities do that administratively rather than in front of a board, but they do have a review for that to ensure compliance with all the standards. So the community also has the ability to make sure that the standards, the safety in terms of the tower inspection are all met.
So that if someone from the community happened to see something that they thought was out of the ordinary, they would reach.
I would simply go to the community and then have the community address that with the tower company and/or the applicable other part of the industry that needs to do it, ma'am. There could be, it could be not just the tower, it could be any other particular environmental or technical issue that's necessary. Okay?
So, Mr. Comey, once the tower is approved and the federal people come in and get their data and it's approved, there's no ongoing further inspection by that organization as time passes?
Well, the federal government doesn't do that inspection. Every 5 years, the industry has a document that says, here's what I'm supposed to inspect on a monopole. I check for the condition of the facility to make sure it's not getting weaker, it doesn't have rust, it doesn't have bolts missing, et cetera, et cetera. That's for the facility and condition of the facility. As far as the health standards and issues, like I said, I've never seen it be an issue on a cell tower. However, the industry is constantly upgrading their services and administratively having a way, and the federal government does allow, to ensure that the compliance is being met, can be done administratively. It doesn't take a board hearing or a public hearing to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to make a comment?
So we approve it? Vote.
Well, at this point, to give Mr. Comey a chance to review what he received on Friday, I'd like to request that we adjourn this for.
Sure, or another way, if I may, submit to the board and council that you might consider closing and conditioning any approval on the acceptance of the engineering and structural documents by CMS's engineers, Nelson and Pope in the building department. That way, to the extent we still need to go back to the zoning board, once this board's done, we can be maybe half a step further. We'd be more than willing to accept a condition that would cover the interests of this board.
In view of the fact we've had, I think, at least 4 months' worth of meetings, and there has not been a great, well, I think, Mr. Lillo, you're the only person from the public who'd actually asked a question about the application. I'd be prone to close the public hearing.
That's acceptable.
With the two conditions, fine.
We've closed the public hearing, and then as far as their request to approve the, I would say we'd want to wait to.
But you need to receive the reports
Right.
from the conditions and then be prepared for a vote at some subsequent time.
And then when can we look at SECR?
Seeker could be done once the public hearing's closed, and I'm going to get some input from Mr. Comey. But that could be ready next month.
Thank you.
Do it.
Okay. Make a motion to close the public hearing of Capital Telecom Acquisitions LLC,
Subject to
subject to conditions of review of.
by Nelson Pope and Voorhees and Mr. Comey's office.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, experts.
That's the second one.
Thank you very much.
He's got a long drive, so he's.
Have a good ride.
Well,
Pending.
at least it's a decent day out there, for sure.
Better.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Great.
So moving into the tennis court segment of the meeting, the first application, Halsey Holdings, 11 Halsey Farm Drive, has been adjourned pending ZBA decision. The second application, 70 Pheasant Close East, received a report on that application from you today, Kathy. Did you want to summarize that?
Oh, that was on Bishop's Lane.
Yeah,
That was
the
on Bishop's Lane,
70,
We have a resolution.
We have the decision for 70 Pheasant Close East.
and a vote on that affirmatively will be to approve the application as amended.
A motion to vote on that
So moved.
decision. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alan, you need to pull that decision out of the file and
You want, now that one is number 2100.
2100.
And there's a thing.
Gotta vote on this.
The votes on
Should
that.
be on the top. This is the original instrument.
So we had a aye. Did you vote aye? Did you vote aye or did you not vote?
I voted aye, even though the court, I think this is the right one, goes the wrong way, so it's being done for other than playing tennis.
Did you
I'd
vote
like the
aye?
footnote to show.
I voted aye and
It's a
voted
trivial
Warren.
court.
Who's got the original?
So I vote yes with an asterisk. It's
Not a
nuts.
player to be named later.
Yeah, draft choice.
Okay, so it would be the second app, 136 Bishop Lane LLC.
Counsel, this goes back in the folder, right?
That Kathy,
Okay.
Yes. So we prepared this memo, which you have, which identified some missing information from the site plan regarding drainage and a couple of discrepancies between the site plan and the landscape plan. I got a call from Mr. White here explaining that this is a hydro court, which there was no information on the plan about that, so we treated it as if it was a typical paved court. So Mr. White, I'm sure, has some input on that. But we would need some details on the plans, which, give us the benefit of, what is this and how does it work, in order to make recommendations.
Here's the-
I'm Michael White.
Yes, sir.
Basically, what we're doing is, this court, we've put a couple of them in Southampton Village, and it doesn't require drainage. Basically, it's got a reservoir underneath, which is stone, and it's got perforated pipe, and it is on the plan that it is perforated pipe, and that's one of the things that Nelson Pope wrote. They didn't understand why there was perforated pipe. And what it does is, the court, rather than the existing court now, which is Hartrue, which is above the ground, which doesn't
Bless you.
flood anything, it has no, the water goes through it. Rather than having sprinkler heads overhead, it has the water comes from below and has a self-leveling system. It's all mechanical, has like a sump pump. And
Bless
when
you.
the water level goes up, it pumps the water out. It pumps the water out of the court. And when it needs water, when the water level drops, it has a well and it builds up the court and hydrates it. So you don't have to stop playing tennis for the sprinklers to go on. I mean, that's basically what it is. And it stays perfectly wet. And since it's below grade, this court would be impossible to ever flood. It's impossible. You'd need a 10-foot rain to flood it because it's got about 4 or 5 feet underneath of drainage, and it has the 4 feet of the sunken court. So, it's kind of strange to be asking for a drainage plan when it's a self-contained system. And hydro courts aren't something new. They've been around for 20 years, and there's literally dozens of them in the village.
Kathy, does the drainage requirements that you're referring to, are those specified by code or are those just?
They're just standards that are applied for pervious surfaces, impervious surfaces. So, we're just, if you have something that is 4 feet down and it's all concrete, then the water is just gonna get stuck in there. It's gonna be a swimming pool. So it has to have the drainage, so this is a different design, I guess, but that obviously wasn't specified on the plans. But, I wouldn't mind seeing one of these things in person, but in any case, yeah, no, we look at drainage calculations for a tennis court as if it's just an impervious surface, and just to make sure that it doesn't, end up being filled with water.
So is this more, this system is for a court that needs to be watered?
Well, like Hartrue has to be watered all the time, or else it gets very dusty. And,
So is that what this is about?
yeah,
But it's not about the regular drainage that's going to come from a rainfall? Or does the rainfall water go through here, get trapped in this reservoir for future?
yes. Yeah.
And if you get too much rain, it gets pumped out, and if you don't have enough rain, it pumps it in from the water supply?
Right.
And where does it get pumped out to?
Well, we did one in Pheasant Close 4 years ago. I did for the same homeowner. It's never put a drop of water in the drains. It's always absorbed it, and it's got a membrane and has sand underneath, so you'd have to have like an incredible rain to have any flood. And we do put the drain in there, one set of drains anyway, just for an emergency, just in case, but, you know, it's virtually impossible, and it would be foolish. You know, right now, this court, you know, technically it drains into people's yards because it's above ground. I mean, you'd be foolish to not put any drainage, because your court, I mean, basically your whole court's the dry well. I mean, it would be ridiculous to it's kind of weird to even.
You'd be surprised what we see here. So it might be ridiculous, but sometimes people just don't put the right drainage in there.
Do you
So-
have
They are
a
providing.
revised plan?
They are providing,
I don't think we got one,
the
right?
plans that we got last time.
Yeah.
But they are showing sufficient drainage.
Mm-hmm.
It was just that, it was just confusing because they were showing
On the
the
pipes,
pipe
yeah.
that was
On the
perforated.
pipes, yeah.
And so, and then they weren't showing where the drains would be, and so that's what raised the question. So,
Well, there's no drains necessary. The perforated pipe is the drain. You know, and the
Well,
water.
you're gonna need, you would need some type of drain if it gets filled up and you have a pump shown on this, you're gonna pump it someplace.
No, it goes, what happens is, the pipes are at the level of the pump. When the reservoir, if the reservoir ever filled up, which is almost impossible, the water would go in the socked pipe with the perforations in it, and it would drain into the dry well.
So the perforate, yeah, so you have
Right.
dry well.
Yeah.
right, they are
That's what I'm saying, you
proposing
have it-
dry wells, yeah.
They have
yeah.
one.
Do you have the
Yeah,
plan?
this is-
Because I'm
this
looking
is
through my
the-
old file, I can't
That's
see
like
it.
for an emergency, but I haven't ever seen that happen. And it's more efficient way to water it. It's not wasting water by evaporating. It's basically,
So what do you need to feel more comfortable about this, Kathy? Do you need engineering
I don't know, I
drawings
mean,
from the
Steve's
manufacturer?
an engineer, I mean, that's,
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's plausible to me. If we can get just calculations on what, you know, these blue areas are gonna hold a certain amount of water,
right,
just get a little bit more data on it, I don't really see a problem with it, actually.
okay.
but would that even matter? Because even if that did fill up, we still have the dry wells. So basically, that would never fill up because it would go into the sand, but God forbid it did. I still have the proper amount of drainage. Just so we didn't have a problem, we put that.
Right. I think the way
I don't know, it's just,
I mean,
you know,
I don't mind changing gears if you have something that works, but all the tennis courts that we do, all the drainage that lands on them goes into a dry well. This is gonna change a little bit, because it's actually saying it'll actually go straight down.
Right.
Which, if somebody comes in with a tennis court and says, oh, all the drainage is gonna go straight down, we don't have any dry wells, we would not approve it,
Right.
right?
So,
So I
right.
think we just need to get a little bit more data, but I think anything, rather than go down in the sand, I think it can just go into this drain pipe and into the available drainage, and then we're really not changing the way we've been approving tennis courts.
right,
There's just a different system of water being introduced to keep the Hartrue
Moist.
where it's supposed to be,
Right.
right?
right.
And then it will evaporate in, but anything that's extra will go into these drainage tanks, which look like they're adequate anyway.
So are you saying that those specs could be attached to this plan to just say, okay, because there's nothing that indicates that this is a
You know what,
unique system on the site plan?
What I'm saying is, I don't think we should have water that just goes straight down into the sand from this system. And there's pipes here that, because the perforated pipe looks like it's within some type of a reservoir that holds it, right?
A gravel reservoir, yeah.
So it's not, it looks like it's drawn like there's two like U cavities that it sits in. If it's a rock reservoir, how's it gonna hold water?
Well, supposedly with the pipe, there's enough pipe there. What they're saying is you don't even need the drains because there's enough pipe zigzagging through there that it would actually hold as much water as a dry well anyway. But we're putting that just so, the dry wells, just so he doesn't have to explain the whole situation. That's why he said just put the dry wells on.
Right.
So how many of the pipes are there? Is there a plan view
I
of
think
this?
they're every 4 feet.
Is there a plan view version of this that shows where
I
the?
could get that. Well, I think what I'm asking for, if I could get like a conditional approval to put the walls in and then come back, because what happened is we started building the house. And if I don't put the walls in now, I'm gonna have a problem getting back there because it's a tight lot and a lot of fill has to come out. So I don't think that would affect anything if I put the walls, and then I could come back next month with the drawings or send them to Kathy and, you know, ahead of time so she could review it, of the engineering of it.
So it's just an approval of the retaining wall that surrounds the tennis court that,
With the condition that the drainage system still has to meet our
Yeah,
approval,
I
and
mean-
if for some reason we decide this isn't good, and I'm not saying we would, but just you'd have to put in like you have to meet the standards of the drainage we require.
Well, on the plan, the engineer said, he goes, that's standard, what I have on there now. And he says
I
there's,
get it's standard, but we still got to approve it, and we
It's
haven't
just a new entry mechanism.
approved it yet.
but they did approve it. Didn't your office approve the drainage rings, that they were enough for a standard court?
they are, yes, they have enough capacity, that's
Right.
correct. So the whole question came up is because we saw this perforated drain pipe, that's the, you know, so
Right.
that's what kind of
Just-
said,
it's a
well, wait a
capacity-
minute, what is that? Why is it
Capacity access
perforated?
question, because
So-
it's new.
If we're not that, it would just be, okay, there are some discrepancies in the plan, and there's some, you know, it's a difference in the calculations, you saw the memo.
Yeah,
You know, that you should have these things, you know, site plan should be correct. That if you have something in your calculations, it should be consistent with what is shown in the cross-section, and, you know, that you know, show invert elevations and so forth. So there are certain details we asked for, but everything looked fine otherwise. So,
Okay.
and it was just that one thing that I was like, oh, I don't know why he's doing
Right.
the perforated drain pipe, so. And someone mentioned that also in the
Well,
work
if
session,
you
so.
can do it, then in case you do 10 others in the future, we're all set.
right. I hope so.
Just
I could
because
do
it's a
10
new,
more.
it's a new access concept.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess the answer is I don't see any problem with approving because that's basically approving the footprint of the tennis court and then working out the details of the drainage
Yeah.
in the next month, and so it doesn't put them in a fix, I mean, but that's up to you.
Steve? What are the setbacks on the tennis court?
We have 10 feet from, looks like 10 feet from each side. You did the
It doesn't-
setbacks
It's an
are
existing
good, or?
one.
It
It's
doesn't
an-
meet the setbacks because it's a replacement
It's
in kind.
replacing an existing
Oh,
one.
there's an existing court
Exactly.
there.
It's
Yeah.
replacing an existing
And so
one.
the ZBA would be okay with that?
It's across the board that they
It's-
just allow replacement.
Did you hear
in
that?
kind, yeah.
It's an existing one,
There's an existing court,
and it goes north
and
and
they're
south.
just putting it in the same exact spot.
And I think it goes north and
Right.
south, so it's actually may get used as a tennis
Except it's gonna
court
be-
some of the time.
Is it sunken now, or it's at grade?
No, it's got the giant
It's that
12-foot
great.
fence, and
Yeah,
the neighbors hate it.
It's flat.
Right.
Well, I'd like to hear you, Michael, document, when did the house construction start?
Last week.
And it wasn't apparent any time before this that there was going to be a problem if the house construction started to get fill in and out of the backyard?
They were gonna leave the tennis court out of the ground. And then he decided later on, the way the house is going up, he didn't wanna look at the fence. And he spoke to the neighbors, and the neighbors said, you know, we'd appreciate if you did drop the court and screen it. So that's,
Right, that's fine, so he's not prepared then to suffer the procedural consequences of having the house construction delayed in order to
What's the square
go through
footage
the
of the
board?
whole
And the problem I have here is that this is an expedition to somebody, this is not a board of expedition. There are some legitimate
45,000.
issues that have arisen, and once this board starts to make exceptions for expediency, it never ends.
right, I
And the
understand
next
that.
applicant comes in and says, oh, well, you know, the applicant is in Corsica this week and he can't make the hearing, but he wants it approved anyway. And so where does it end? I mean, so I would like you to document how it came about that this now becomes a crisis.
It's a lot.
Effectively, that it can't wait until the next meeting of the board, and these are resolved to the satisfaction of the consultant, who then can recommend to the board to approve this without a condition.
Well, I think the consultant looked at it, and the only concern that a consultant
This
would have
installed
would
anywhere in
be
the
the
neighborhood
drainage. And
around
they
here?
said
He
they were
says it
fine with
is.
the drainage as is. And And the court that we're gonna have doesn't even need that much drainage, but we'll put that in anyway, just for the sake of making everyone happy. And if I would have known, that he would have wanted to do this, I would have done it much earlier, but, this also benefits the neighborhood. I mean, it's on an acre, and it's got this ugly prison fence up, 12 foot in the air.
There's apparently no doubt that it is, but that's sort of like a collateral benefit that wasn't done out of the largesse of the homeowner to save the neighborhood. It was his own personal decision to not see the full court that he wanted it sunken, correct?
Well, it's also the neighbors. It's 10 foot from the property line.
I said that's a
Yeah.
collateral
Right.
benefit. It's not the direct benefit,
Right.
nor the motivation.
Mhm.
So I'm just saying, we need to document this because this is not where the board does not want to be in a position to have to make exceptions like this to accommodate personal circumstances of applicants because they've gotten themselves into these issues or
Right.
difficulties.
Right.
So Kathy, if you're prepared to waive off on it, I guess if the dry wells are adequate in terms of their capacity as shown, then there's sort of the technical issue with resolving the issue or resolving the understanding of the piping system.
Right. I mean, if that, like I said, if that wasn't there, it would have been,
All right.
it would have
Well,
been
we
okay,
still would have
'cause we
waited,
would've had
we
to-
still would have waited a month for a resolution to be
Right.
drafted.
That's right.
So what does the board wish to do?
How do we document that it's a special case in the decision?
Yes, but again, I can't write the decision
Right,
tonight. So
understood.
it's going to have to hold over to the work session.
Right. But we could grant him the conditional approval to build the walls and do the decision at the next meeting.
Well, I don't think he's
provided he-
talking about building the wall, he's talking about doing the excavation.
Wants to
right?
do the excavation.
Was the deal
Right,
of the
yeah, I
whole-
have to excavate there.
So let it refer only to the excavation, right? You don't need, you're going to be building the walls between now and the next meeting? The,
I would at least get excavated. I
Yeah,
don't know if I could.
yeah,
build them
that's what I'm
that
saying,
fast.
is
Yeah.
limit
I don't know
to
if I
the
could build them that
excavation.
fast. No, I.
once you've got the fill out,
Right. Well, you tell me if you want me to do that, I'll do it.
well, I'm just saying, the minimal amount of conditions, the better for the board.
Okay.
And if you can function with just getting the fill out, because we understand that's what the issue is, that's better than approving walls, and let that go to the next phase of the application process.
Okay.
All right.
So we're approving the post-excavation.
You're just approving the excavation.
Thank you.
So,
Post-excavation.
You'll have to, I'll have to inform the building department of this tomorrow, Michael, so it'll be
Yeah.
Wednesday before you.
Yeah, I'm not ready to do it yet anyway. I'm
Right.
just doing the foundation of the house.
Right. Conditionally approve approving only that part of the
Tennis court
application.
excavation,
Only
subject,
that part of the
subject to
application refers
confirmation
to
of the
excavation.
technical revisions that have been presented, that our consultant agrees that they make sense with the regulations we've always used.
Subject
That
to a
would be
written
my
decision
motion.
at the next meeting.
And subject to a written decision at the next meeting.
And written decision would be the next meeting of completion with Kathy.
Do we have a second to that motion?
I can make a motion.
He needs a second.
You need a second? I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And I'll get Kathy the plans by Friday at the latest.
What is the motion?
Thank you.
To give him an approval to excavate.
Are we approving that?
Approving, just the-
All
just
right,
that.
moving into subdivision review. Is decision in the file for OIA Associates?
There is not, and I hope to have one maybe by December, but I'll have to go back through years of the file and hope it's all there and determine a decision.
What did
We would adjourn that.
Adjourn for all purposes to the
What,
next regular meeting.
McFarland do? Pass?
Do I have a second to that motion?
We're adjourning it.
Adjourning OIA?
Yeah.
I'll
Waiting for
second.
the
All in
decision.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's adjourned.
PEP 2 Holdings, any further resolution of the bond values?
No idea.
Kathy, I haven't done anything on that, so I don't know what
Yeah,
your
it's
office
this-
had to
this-
do, or do they
this-
have submissions?
Yes, we had
Okay.
submissions,
Right.
and it was $7,000 for the performance bond and $10,000 for the maintenance bond. So it's just, at this point, it's just authorizing a resolution, so that way it can go to the trustees.
Is the application ready for approval overall?
Oh, it was conditionally approved, so this
Okay.
is one of the conditions.
All right.
Yeah, so it got taken off the agenda and just put back on for a resolution for the
All right, so
bond.
I'll have the resolution for the work session for the bonds.
Does it need to be adjourned?
Adjourn to the work session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
554 Hill Street. Further development of the sketch plan has been received October 21st.
And then revised.
For the
Revised-
applicant, Gilbert G.
revised
Flanagan,
today.
21 South Main Street, Southampton. You may remember that we did discuss this at the work session, and there were some comments made which were appropriate about some of the notations that were shown on the sketch plan, and then some of them were carryovers from the previous sketch plan that we'd submitted showing 4 lots. And we have subsequently submitted, actually earlier today, I believe it was, some revised maps, last revised October 28th, which really had to do with the right-of-way shown running from Lot 1 southerly from Hill Street to Lot 2. Remember, there was a gate that was shown, which was a vestige of the previous application, which had a fire access to the south of Lot 1. So that gate was removed. Any limitations on the use of the right-of-way for emergency access, that was removed. So now the detail shows a 20-foot wide right-of-way with 12-foot wide pavement that would provide access both for lots 1 and 2. So that's the change that was made since the work session.
This is the right-of-way that's on the east?
All the way on the east, running south from Hill
The
Street.
east edge?
Yes,
Thank
correct.
you.
And the other thing that we discussed, and Kathy, I believe, is absolutely right, in that since this is an amended application which now has 3 lots rather than 4, we need to amend and resubmit the environmental assessment form, the expanded environmental assessment form, and we're working on that. So I don't really think there's much else that can be done with it at this point until we provide that for you for review.
So it's now 3 lots in this property that is awkwardly in 2 zoning areas, and it goes, it's like a flag lot, it's the second lot off Hill Street.
Right, that lot would be serviced by a right-of-way, which the code does permit. In fact, the
But I'm
planning
just-
board
I'm just
regulations
trying-
allow up to 3 lots.
I'm
by
just trying to
means of
visualize,
right-of-way.
coming off, there's a road off Hill Street to get to the first and second lots, north
Correct.
to south.
Right. It looks like a flag lot, but it isn't because it's actually, it doesn't have legal frontage. It doesn't have legal frontage, but it can be served by a right-of-way.
Yeah, but the access to lot 2 is.
Yes.
They go off Hill Street, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So
And-
there's only 1 lot would access
Okay.
Captain's Neck Lane, which is the southernmost.
Kathy, have we had any review of the right-of-way for lot 3 off of Captain's Neck Lane?
In what way?
It is about a 6-foot drop of land. Where
Oh, as far as the topo
the house
goes?
that it goes next to was moved by special appeal to the north, which will, from a setback, I guess, make view of it. I'm not dealing with zoning or other things, but that right-of-way has a drop-off from the lot. And there was a ZBA approval of it because of the situation of the applicant in which it was, I was told, and I can't find the file because it disappeared when the building department moved, I was told, I don't know anything about it, that there would not be used for a right-of-way when the house was moved by special exemption to the north side of its lot, by exemption from the neighbors and the ZBA 10 or 12 years ago, whenever that house was constructed. I remember when they built it, but it was a decade ago, roughly. So I'd like to, does somebody who reviews that, do we do that the right-of-way makes sense? You got, it's gonna be some construction.
So from the fire protection perspective, when the right-of-way was being looked at in that right angle and the topo was being looked at because of access for a fire truck, and I believe that there are different requirements when you only serving one lot.
Right,
Not that
I
it's
know.
not
Oh,
as
yeah,
important,
absolutely. No.
but there's still, you know, the turnaround requirements are less. So, I mean, as far as having a driveway that goes like that, I don't know if there's a problem with that.
This is one that goes straight with a wall that has to be, a real wall has to be built to the north side of it, I believe. Because
I
that's what
looked
the
at
land,
the
that's what the
topo for
land
this.
does.
I have to look at the topo again.
Goes down like that. And I'm
Do you
not
have
that,
topo for this area that's?
I'm not that tall, but it's,
I don't know that we've gotten that far because we're at the
Yeah.
scheduling
no, it's just
stage.
it's still in the planning station.
Yeah, it's
Bill's right.
the
Yeah.
very beginning of this
Right,
now.
okay.
'Cause
You may
we're-
remember that when we did look at the 4-lot development, the fire marshal did have some input on the right-of-way at that point,
Yeah,
and of
no.
course, that he's going to have to look at it again. I don't know if a referral was made to him, but we'd be happy to review that
Yeah.
when he does.
Because, you know, we're being asked to approve a 40,000 and 120,000 variation, which is less than both of them or any numerical average I've been able to construct. So it's moved to us. It's not normally what this board does. But as a planning area for the neighborhood, we're being asked to squeeze something in a terrible lot that you have to deal with our zoning code. It's an issue because the zoning code runs 3 acres to 1 acre right through it, and we're going to less than either.
Well, actually, the two larger lots are bigger than, and now the two larger
Oh, yeah,
lots are
no,
bigger
no.
than acre.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a question of, well, I find my math. Let me see.
We just got this today.
I haven't done the footage on it, but some are over the 40, some are over the
We'll
40,
take a look
one's
at
under
it.
the 40.
You may remember, this originally came to you many months ago as a
Oh, yeah.
referral from the Board of Appeals. because
Oh,
we
no, that's
started
what I
here,
mean.
so
It's something that isn't normally what the ZBA normally does this. We have it for
Right.
other important reasons.
Right, we're commenting it from a subdivision perspective
Yeah.
and how it works as a subdivision, knowing
Yep.
perfectly well that this does not conform to the zoning because of this extenuating circumstances of having a use, a non-conforming use.
And my issue is we have
Also,
an
lots
eminent member of
non-conforming in
the
area.
community who's very active and with approval on the zoning board, who's getting an exception of a zoning basis other than from his own board for us, and this is not what we normally do. So we're looking at a merger of these two lots in a neighborhood where we've got neighbors that think if life goes this way, and other neighbors that say, you know, why should there be an exception in this case? And so if you're stuck as a civic citizen, which those of us who do this are, it's filled with all sorts of issues.
It's one of the things the Board of Appeals has to look at. Obviously, that's a
That's right.
fundamental issue here, but it's a chicken and egg situation.
It's circle.
It is a circle.
Absolutely a circle, and Gil's in front of the circle. And
With
it gets
respect to
people,
the chickens and the
and it
eggs,
gets
right.
people excited.
So obviously, we need to give some more information to you, so I would
Yeah.
suggest we just keep it open.
This plan also presumes the demolition of all the existing structures.
Yes,
Oh, yeah, no, it's just
right.
a
And
change.
you may
of
remember that
non-conforming
there was an investigation of the historic value of the two residences, and I think the village's consultant concluded that neither one of them
I'm in the meeting.
That's
had
right.
any historic value, so we recognize we have to deal with that. But yes, all of the buildings would be removed. And it bears repeating that, to my knowledge, this is the only industrial use in a residential zone in the entire village, so it's truly a unique case.
That's left.
What's that?
It's left.
Well, it's still valid as a moving and storage use. Still is,
it
according to the
gas-
building department.
Was the
it is.
gasoline station industrial?
No, it isn't. It isn't. Actually,
It
that's a
isn't?
business use.
Oh, all right.
This is actually light industrial, if you
And
look
now
in
we're
the
about to
code.
adjourn.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I give that,
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Gil.
Thanks, Gil.
Make a motion to
Adjourn.
approve the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes, the 550, 554 Hill Street.
Second.
Mm-hmm. Got a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Beach Plum Meadows, 248 Moses Lane.
You should have in the files a letter requesting that be adjourned.
Yep.
Was submitted earlier because one or more of the people I normally would have present are not able to be here, so we requested it be adjourned for all purposes.
Make a motion to approve the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes, the
December
Beach Plum Meadows
7, yeah,
to the December
7.
7th regular meeting.
Approve, I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Emanon East Corporation, 276 North Main Street.
Yeah, Michael left.
He did.
In the decision is a resolution approving the
Oh, there is a.
sketch plan as basically a reapproval or a ratification of the previous one, but it has been reduced to a resolution for you. So an affirmative vote on the motion will be to approve the sketch plan for the second part of this application.
So this is just basically a change of ownership approval?
No, it's a ratification of the entire previous design.
Approval.
Yeah, an approval of December.
Approve it again for a new owner.
December of 2012.
Exact same plan. I would hope that that resolution will also, if necessary, reaffirm the secret determination that you made at that time, because that'll let us go to
The only exception was just to, I think the secret document should reflect from Nelson Pope and Board's memo, the new ownership.
That's fine, because then we can go to the health department, which is
It's
the
a
next
change
thing.
of ownership. I move that for the purposes that are required, this board reapprove the earlier
Just
approval
approve the
in light of a change of ownership of the application.
You just have to motion to approve the resolution of
Resolution.
November 2nd.
As written.
As written.
As written.
I'll move that.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you kindly.
Site plan review. Shabbat, Southampton at 214 Hill Street. I know Mr. Bregman was here,
Yeah,
but
we
maybe
chased him
not
out.
because of that.
No. He was
They're
here.
gonna submit something about the gates?
Yeah, he was supposed to
Yeah.
resubmit. I don't know if we've seen
He
it.
said at the work session he was going to.
Yeah. Okay, so we're still waiting for that then.
So we're still awaiting that, so
Make a motion to approve the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes the Chabad of Southampton.
Seconded.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Increased Properties, 16 Windmill Lane.
I'm still working on the decision on that, so that will be adjourned for all purposes to the next regular meeting.
So moved.
We're still working on some issues with the plan too, so,
How are you?
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So moved.
Seconded.
So
All
then
in
change
favor?
pending decision, Antoinette, to Nelson Pope and Voorhees continuing review of site plan.
Okay, and then back to motion to approve the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes the Crease property to the December 7th meeting.
Have a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
The Peconic Land Trust, I think I saw some further memorandum from you on that, Kathy.
Yes, we got some input from the fire marshal in writing
Yeah.
that the revised plan demonstrates compliance.
Yep.
And as you saw, they did install they're showing the installed drainage in the road as per Gary Gillespie. So this is
Everything's up to snuff and ready for decision?
The one thing that we could do tonight, though, is to adopt the secret determination. We did the review of the Part 1 EAF and did a Part 2 and didn't identify any significant adverse impacts. So that can be done by signing this, if you agree. And I'll send 2 copies of. So you can sign the bottom of the second page.
So are we voting on this?
Yeah.
Okay, so make a motion to approve the short EAF on Peconic Land Trust?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did this go in the file, Kathy, or back?
Use one for the file and
What's
if
the
you
number?
would like, you can give one to.
County Land Trust is 2089.
He needs it for the health
Health
department.
department.
So that's ready for decision, Kathy?
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much.
So we make a motion to adjourn for decision the Peconic Land Trust?
We have a second?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Southampton Town Newspapers, 135 Windmill Lane.
I'm trying to find the file. They're not in the right numbers.
Don't see it there. Oh, there it is, at the end of the last, the last
Way in
one.
the back.
There we go.
Way in the back. Thank you, sir.
You are to review submittals?
Yeah, this was actually, I'm not sure what that meant on the agenda, actually. But we were kind of going back and forth with the fire marshal, and he said that if they sprinkler the building, then he's good. And the applicant is trying to decide whether they're gonna do that, and if not, if that's a condition of the resolution of the approval, then everything's set to go. Sprinklers or other arrangements. Careful, Alan, of the microphone, you're hitting, no, the one next to it, the files are hitting it.
I'm overfiled.
But so ditto with this one, that we did a review of the environmental impacts and have a part two and a proposed neg deck as well. So this one I did on reverse paper. It's on two-sided, so you just have to sign the back if you are in agreement.
This is Southampton Town newspaper. The short EAF.
So the only outstanding issue then basically is the to sprinkle or not to sprinkle, Kathy?
Yeah.
Right, the way we left it, or discussed it at the work session, I think a reasonable condition would be that we would either sprinkler it, or we would get sufficient alternate
You wanted
means
to
of
appeal for the,
to the state board of review. So one way or the other, we have to comply, but it would have to be, make that as a condition. One way or the other, we have to comply either by sprinklering or by getting something alternate from the board of review of the state.
If we just get a motion to approve this short environmental assessment form for Southampton Town newspaper.
I think that was
So
it. I don't
moved.
think there was anything else.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And secondly, we're discussing a motion to conditionally approve the application based on agreement with the applicant and the fire department and the proper way to handle his concerns.
Right.
The sprinkler.
Or do we need something
We
written?
had a written decision
Yeah.
Need a
on that.
decision, but that would be a condition, which is
Yeah.
fine with us. That's, I think I suggested that, so that's fine.
So I'll make a motion to adjourn Southampton Town newspapers for a decision, a written decision.
Thanks.
Okay, that's in the file.
I have a second for that.
That's in the file. Aye.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That concludes the agenda. We have a prompt to think about the work session in December would normally be December 28th. And since that's a busy week with a lot of folks oftentimes not here, in the past, we have combined that work session with the public meeting and held them concurrently in January, on January 4th. What's everybody think about that idea?
Do we have ARB coming in right behind us that night?
Just take a look.
I don't think so.
Oh, that would be if it was the work
I think it's the
session
week
day.
after that they
Then they
come in, I
usually go,
think.
they might be the following
You're on
Monday.
11.
11.
Okay, yeah, so as long as we don't have them crawling down our back, no.
So we want to do a work session and then do a public meeting, or you want to?
No, we want to do combined work session and public meeting on January 4th. Sound good?
That sounds good.
Yep.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Gil.
Bye, Gil.
Yeah, eat a lot, and drink heavily.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, Heather.
Happy
I
Thanksgiving.
will not be here
I won't
on
see you till
the,
after that, right?
All right.
Okay.
I will not be able to be present on the 4th, but that's okay. I'll still have as much done as we can.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to change the work session of December 28th, is it?
From December 28th to
29th.
January
29th?
29th.
So make a motion to change the December 29th work session and combine it with the public meeting on January 4th, 2016.
Okay.
2016.
Oh, 2016, yeah, that says.
60.
And you want to do it at 5 o'clock?
At 5 p.m.
Instead of 5:30?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's been moved
5 o'clock.
to 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
That's it.
All in favor?
Second it.
Aye. Warren wants to second it.
All right, so now that we've got that, does anybody want to vote on approving the minutes?
I'll do just 1 minute. 1 minute. 1 minute.
All of them are.
God, I got a new.
All of them are,
All
I'm ready to be
Okay.
whenever you guys are.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of September 8th,
Pay somebody.
28th, October 5th, and October 26th.
Second.
Just to get past.
Making a motion to approve these
Oh, my
minutes.
Yeah, I got that on this thing here, we
Okay.
did that, thank
Okay.
you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'll try to make it. All right, with no further business to discuss, can I have a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.